Welcome to Grab a Load, and AMD has launched their 9060 XT. While they did mess up the naming, of course they did, trying to pull an Nvidia and just confuse people on namings. They did seem to have some cards at MSRP. Here I checked out Newegg and Micro Center, and Micro Center has one still in stock close to, I mean, it's a drive for me, but you can still get it at MSRP, and Newegg is $30 above it for the 16 gig. I'm not really looking at the 8 gig cards now. If that's all you can afford, right, you're going to have to make a decision on what card you want to do. You still have Intels there at that 12 gig and 10 gig area there, because the VRAM looks to be an issue if you want to load in all the textures and stuff like that. Well, if you don't load in all the textures, you may not miss it, but that is something that you're going to have to choose, right? If you don't have the money, it's not on you, right? It's not in your budget. That's more on what Nvidia and what AMD are giving you. They had an opportunity, like both of them did. Nvidia didn't expect it, but I expected AMD to kind of give the value to gamers and to make sure that they kind of said, you know what, we're going to put something out there that is going to help move the gaming and be something, move the gaming industry forward and be something that gamers can get behind and show us that we are putting the best foot forward for gamers. Remember when AMD used to do that so many years ago, especially with that some of their other comments of making sure they're trying to get out of the 4 gig area and go to 8 gigs, make sure that 1440p was that level of gaming that we're going to give you, and that basic level that we wanted for every gamer to have. Kind of how the worlds have turned. And yes, Frank Exor kind of put him in this pickle, but you know, I'm going to keep picking on it until, well, somebody else does something just as stupid, right? Now, it is overall the card performance-wise. You look at what Hardware Unboxed did, Gamers Nexus, Tech Power Up, all these places, Jay's 2 cents, and everyone kind of put out there. You're getting, you know, over the 5060, which is, I mean, you could compare it to that for the, you know, on that side. Now, granted, you have the 8 gig one that's probably going to be more compared to that. You're what, 8 to 10% there above it. Now, I would really compare it more to the 5060. Now, there's the 5060 Ti 8 gig is about $30 more expensive than it, and there's about a 3 to 6%, give or take, maybe 3 to 4, 5%, someplace in there, maybe a little bit tighter, advantage that the 5060 Ti has, 16 gigabyte. Now, the 8 gigabyte, right, is in there too, because Nvidia did the same thing that AMD copied, because, you know, of course AMD can't do anything original. They have to copy what Nvidia does. And so if you're looking at this 16 gig to 16 gig, that is a value there. My thing looking at the price here is that if they would have had that 16 gig at $299, I think that this would be a really sweet card, really to get behind, and people would be really excited about it. Now, you know, I see it as $350, and I hate this qualifier, but it's not bad in this market, right, for that 16 gig. And that's where you kind of sit, and you're saying, you know, Nvidia sells the most amount of cards in the 60 class, right? That's kind of their biggest market, that $300 range. I think it's a, granted, right now it is the entry into the market, for the most part, is $300. And if you would have put it at the $300 instead of $350, you might have had something. Now, AMD has a huge gap between the 9060 XT and the 9070 overall, kind of where the performance is sitting. And if I remember, let me just review that performance here. I had the Tech Power Up stuff up, you know, that's 51% difference roughly. 50% difference and performance uplift. So in 1080p, I believe 1440p is about that as well, a little bit more, 57. So you think about it that way, right? There's a huge jump in there. There's nothing sitting in between. And is that kind of just how AMD wanted it, or were they thinking maybe try to get something a little bit more performant here off of this card? I don't know, right? It's sitting at 170 watts, pretty good performance there, bumps up to 175, 180, depending upon the BIOS and stuff of those cards. And so it's a very attractive card. Still something I'm considering, right? I want to do a build. You got 32 compute units on there, if I'm recalling correctly. Seeing if something like that I can build with it to make a console equivalent. I really doing a console equivalent or a console, PC money wise, at least equivalent money wise, is something I've wanted to do here, and just to see what you can get, see how valuable the consoles are. But the 8 gigs of VRAM I don't think is something that you should be investing in, especially if that's what you're going to be using it for, is games. Maybe if you're purely esports and you're never going to do anything else, fine. I just think that 299 is a little bit more expensive. I would like to see that at 199 there in the performance area, and uh, that's just how I'm think about this, is that we had that 199 5080, and I would like to see that 199, if we're going to stick with 8 gigs as a baseline model, stick it there, and done 12 gigs or something, like, right? Make that your next one up at maybe 299. 699 or 16 gigs for 299 I think would have been ideal, but they didn't put forth the effort to make sure that the consumer would have had the benefit, right? And they could say, well, a lot of people buy the 8 gig cards. Well, is that just because that's what you sell, right? Chicken and egg thing here. And I did a video on the gaming side, like, is the hardware holding it back? And I think part of the reason why, you could say, well, games need to be more optimized, but at what point do you optimize out all the textures just to fit in the 8 gig buffer, right? If you want to have a beautiful game and that's what you're going for, I don't think that you should have to go to the optimization level to remove all the textures just so that you can fit it in and play on an 8 gig VRAM buffer. At some point, we have to progress here with technology. And I think technology itself, I see it as a progression of an improvement over there. We can go back and saying, people said, you'll never need more than this, right? That's happened throughout history. Uh, Many tech people have said, we don't need any more RAM than this. And I think we're in a state of where we just expect progression, and these graphics cards, especially on the low end here, don't seem to be doing that. I mean, on the high end, I can, remember where there's been remarks where I can't believe we're not progressing in VRAM fast enough, right? And AI has kind of pushed that forward, and here on the low end, the 8 gig models were still like, yeah, you still got that in there. And Intel, this is where I think Intel kind of makes its GPUs kind of valuable. If you want to go for that 299 range at 8 gigs, look at the B580 and the B570. They're options for you. They're a little bit cheaper, especially if you can get them for MSRP at 250 and under. Why not go that route? That's another option I've thought about, to do a console gaming system there. And if Intel keeps improving their drivers, then that is a option many people will probably have to start considering if they want to not have to upgrade in a year or two, because the favorite game they want, and they want to turn on some textures and stuff, and visuals that they wanted to have are there. And this is where, Hardware Unboxed did a great video just kind of testing. They did an Intel AMD CPU. They did the best case scenario on the 9800X3D, right, Gen 5 PCIe with the 3D V cache. And when you get to 8 gigs of VRAM and you go over it, right, then you have to swap out with system memory, and that can be taxing. And if, depending upon what CPU you have, if you're not running 9800X3D, you're probably going to have worse performance than what he had, showing, where AMD could have, this is where you could have really just hit it off, right? We are able to take that. You can buy one of our processors, maybe a non-3D, be able to get entry into gaming, and 16 gigs RAM of V buffer to compensate and help you out to get the best possible gaming experience for a budget PC. And this is where I think you have two ends of it, right? You have the budget PC section, where should have been addressing that area, which AMD would have highly succeeded at, I think, considering what we're hearing out there with Micro Center selling a whole bunch of the 9070s XTs and getting that through a lot. And then you have the that would have been just carried over to this 9060 in that budget realm, and people would have gotten behind. You would have gotten more people into Radeon and them using your graphics cards, and I think that would have been a really good thing. But considering where the market is, you still got some good value because Nvidia is kind of, I think, shorting its customers as well in this price point, right? And it's the biggest price point, right? Nvidia said this. It's the most GPUs are sold in here, and uh, they are putting it where is it worth it for the extra $50? Can you spare the extra $50 to get this? And that's where I'm gonna have to say yes for myself, right? If it came down to a strict price, I think I would actually just wait a month and try to get an extra $50 at this point. Um, go scrounge around big family members for a gift. I don't know. It's really just the positivities of this release that AMD could have had by just having that, this is our $300 GPU, this is what we're going with. You want the 8 gig, we're going to make that, fine. I'll give you 225 AMD, 230, someplace in there. I'd like a 199, give you that. I think you'd have a great big space, right? Which doesn't look great, but that's what you would have had. I think you'd have been able to put in a lot of GPUs in both segments of the market, and or sold a lot there, and you would have had that 9060 XT with the 8 and 16 gigs of VRAM difference, the differentiator there. Same GPUs, but the different VRAM. I think a lot of people would have respected that with the different names. Then you would have had that 9070 XT, and I guess the GRE you could have brought in as well. And you would have had these stepping stones and been, we're dedicated to the gamer, get them reinvigorated and get them excited, because gamers, I think, are looking for excitement in the gaming industry, especially in the hardware side. And if you would have done that, launched that, and showed off some of the games and stuff with it, I think there would have been a lot there for you, and people would have been very excited about it. So that is one thing I've been thinking about, and seeing what this is when I was looking through reviews. Yeah, it performs. It overall, you're close to that 5060 Ti at the, let's say 4%-ish area, and that's where you needed to be, you needed to sit at. And I think you're $30 cheaper, so Nvidia minus $50, right? That's the whole Gamers Nexus thing that he keeps talking about, and that's not where you wanted to be. And so this GPU, yeah, in the market today, it seems reasonable. Could it have been better? Absolutely. Could they have given more to the gamer with this GPU? Absolutely. But where we're sitting today and how we're sitting, it's really kind of difficult for the consumer side of things. And this is where Hardware Unboxed kind of commented on this, and every reviewer kind of points this out. You got a certain power limit, and you got some games. I think this is a pretty reasonable card to get into and to use, and hopefully AMD will continue moving forward and give the next generation, build off of that. Maybe they can even get a 9080, even if it's just a 9080, not even a 9080 XT. If you can overclock, I know they didn't have build a GPU, but maybe you can do the 9070 XT, do higher clocks on it, more power, and higher VRAM, and get close to the 5080 and have something in that range. And maybe this is something where you have a bigger stack here and people are going, yeah, this seems like it's a pretty good stack, something I'm willing to try out. And you can be successful there and start rebuilding that Radeon brand that needs some momentum behind it. And this is, I think this is a slight stumbling block, just be on the whole RAM thing, because it's gonna keep coming up. The naming with the RAM is gonna keep coming up, and it's gonna be a sticking point. It's a sticking point for Nvidia. Nvidia is not getting traction on it. People aren't gonna just turn a blind eye to AMD, which you don't get a pass just because you're the different company that started first, right? You get the same scrutiny on it, maybe even more, because now you're the second one that has done it and done the dumb thing that everyone said was dumb to begin with, right? But these are things that if AMD irons out overall, You know, the card, I think for where we're at in the market, like I said, go and buy it. That's where the money you can spend. That's the money you have. You know, if you're not looking at this, I think your next one is the 5070 Ti, 16 gig. That's where you're going to be looking at next. If not, then you're jumping into 9070 and uh, the 9070. Oh wait, it's the 5060 Ti, right? Yeah, and then you got the 5070 from there. Yeah, 5060 Ti, 16 gig. The 8 gigs you're probably leaving alone unless you just want to get an entry GPU. So then that means you're doing, well, Intel. Intel for entry, right now, or last gen. And then you're just building off from there. But, you know, the 5070 Ti is in there. You got the 9070 XT, depending upon what you want. Those are, you know, a few percentage difference as well. So you're going to look at price there, price compare. But this is kind of where we're sitting right now. And yeah, I not too shabby here, AMD. You're finally putting some GPUs together. Hopefully that you can sell a lot and sell through on these and keep up your stable drivers, keep on building in the market so that we have something with some true competition here because of the good things you've done and not, you know, just following what Nvidia does. So with that, let me know what your thoughts are on the 9060 XT release. What do you think about the 8 gig? I know I'm beating it up here because of that, but overall, you know, overall, right? If I'm looking at it, you know my exact price, but AMD gave you some performance uplift. I think it's what like over the last gen it's a little bit slower than the 7700 XT, 2% slower there, but over the 7060 XT, that's a 37% jump. So they did have a big jump, 7600 to 60 series, uh, gen over gen, which I do like. That's a great option here for AMD, and hopefully they continue stuff like that, especially at the lower end, delivering performance gen over gen, so that 1060 or whatever they're going to call it next really really helps out and moves the needle for these lower end entry level GPUs, because that's where most of the GPUs are sold. Not everybody can buy the $2,000 GPU, and if you can give it and increase that performance, I think that'll actually be the biggest push against a competitor, especially at a good price point, to show, hey, we're going to deliver more for the gamer and make sure that they're being taken care of, right? Take care of the gamer. The gamer will then go and buy your hardware because you're taking care of the gamer, and you'll be the one that's being talked about. It's probably not a bad way to build a brand overall, right? You're using these as gaming GPUs. Maybe you want to take care of the gamer a little bit so they want to keep coming back to your hardware. With that, thank you so much for watching Gray Overload and helping this channel grow. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, as it really does help out the channel. And until next time, God bless.